Can we stop expecting dried fruit inclusions to act like fresh fruit inclusions in our loaves? Hi, I'm Annette, micro baker in Chicago and owner of Dough My Goodness Bakery, and I'm here to help you simplify sourdough. This is episode 5 in a series I'm calling Inside the Loaf. Today we're talking about dried fruit. Earlier in the series, we've covered things that add moisture to your loaf and things that steal moisture from your loaf. Dried fruit is a little bit different than all of those things that we talked about so far. Dried fruit does pull moisture from your loaf, but not right away, not until it's in the oven. During the bake, the fruit will begin to rehydrate using moisture from the surrounding crumb. If you don't plan for that in your dough, you're going to end up eating very dry bread with a little bit of fruit in it, even if your dough felt great going into the oven. So things like dried cranberries, dried fig, dried apricots, all of these fruits are dehydrated, so they're hungry for moisture. Once they hit that oven heat, they start drawing moisture from the dough around it so they can plump back up. That moisture, in part, is what keeps your crumbs soft. So if you don't build extra hydration into your dough from the start, that fruit is going to steal it from your finished loaf. So when using dried fruit, I use 20% of my flour weight. So in my standard recipe where you use 500 grams of flour, I would use 100 grams of dried fruit. And a pre-soak won't really help you here. Instead, the fix is on the front end of the recipe. If you're using my base recipe from my video, 10 Simple Steps to Sourdough, it's a 68% hydration recipe. For any loaf where you want to include dried fruit, increase the water by about 13 grams, bringing it to approximately 70% hydration. That small bump is enough to leave extra moisture in the crumb without making it really hard to handle or shape. In this loaf, I'm also using orange powder along with my dried cranberries, about 5 grams of the dried orange powder. If you don't have and don't want to get orange powder, that's totally fine. You can totally use orange zest in its place. I would use about 10 grams. That's roughly the zest of about 1 large orange. The benefit to me of using the powder is that it's shelf stable and I have to use less of it to get that same flavor punch. Now, dried fruit isn't as fragile as fresh fruit, as we reviewed in one of our previous episodes in this series. So you've got a lot of flexibility in the technique that you want to use. You can fold them in during coil folds, or you can add them in during shaping, which I will show you in a demonstration here. The only caveat is that if you're doing it during shaping, don't laminate the dough out too thin. Leaving your dough a reasonable amount of thickness, it decreases the risk of that dried fruit tearing through the surface once they're folded in. Come with me and see how this comes together.
Okay, tip the dough out and we go straight into lamination. Remember that this dough runs a little bit higher hydration than my other loaves, so it is going to feel stickier in your hands. I want you to resist the urge to flour the bench here. So I stretch it into a rectangle, and that's the orange powder standing in for orange zest, if that's what you'd like to use. So I spread it out over the surface, leaving that outer edge bare, just like a pizza crust. And the cranberries go in on top of the orange. We're using about 70 to 75% of our inclusions at this stage. And we're saving the rest for one step later on. So this dough is ready for the letter fold. I use the bench scraper. It's doing a little bit of the heavy lifting here, lifting the corners so they can release clean instead of the dough tearing. Again, no flour on the bench here. Unfermented flour worked in partway through will leave your crumb dense and gummy. So once you finish the letter fold, the log shape is formed. Make sure that the seams are sealed shut, and you pick it up, turn it sideways. Gently flatten it to make room for the rest of the inclusions. We then pull up those bottom 2 corners for the modified fold and roll. We seal the seam after every roll, and because this dough is very sticky, it holds to itself without much coaxing. So the bench scraper cleans up the edges, do poke and pinch gently. We don't want any blowouts. Dried fruit edges can be sharp, so a light touch matters here. So we dust it with flour. And since this flour stays on the outside of the loaf, it's not getting worked into the crumb. So doing that is fine. Into the banneton, seam side up. This is a moment for any last minute adjustments, but keep it light. The cranberries can poke through if you're too rough with it. Honestly, if it looks good as is, just skip the stitch entirely. Dust the seam, press it in, cover with something breathable, ready for its final proof. Happy baking.